And now we interrupt our regular programming to broadcast live the latest events regarding Julian Assange's legal case. Assange's attorneys and legal team will apply on Wednesday, today, for bail on his behalf after a discreet but paramount victory on Monday at Old Bailey Court in London. But now we have our correspondent and our colleague also, Pablo Navarrete, in the place of the events. Pablo, good morning for you.
Good morning to the teleSUR English viewers. I'm here outside the Westminster Magistrates Court in central London, where approximately 20 minutes ago the session to see whether Julian Assange will be granted bail has begun. Assange is in the court. The judge, Vanessa, the judge is presiding over whether to grant Assange bail after Monday's decision not to grant the US the extradition request they wanted to take Julian Assange to the US, face 18 charges, 17 espionage charges, and one of computer interference. Now, that decision, which shocked many and was a pleasant surprise to Julian Assange's supporters, has meant that now Julian Assange has the possibility of being released on bail and waiting the US government formally decides whether it will appeal the decision on Monday. So now some of his supporters are out here. Even the British police, the British government has said that there are no protests because we are under the high level of lockdown because of the coronavirus, which has grown exponentially in the UK. But still a number of supporters here, and there are about 50 or 60 media from internationally and national media here waiting to see if Julian Assange will be let free on bail.
Yes, Pablo, on Monday, several people gathered in the outsides, in the nearbys of the Old Bailey Court. But today we know we have supporters there, that there are activists, political activists who support him and who see this as a victory, or a possible victory for journalism in the world. Can you describe the ambiance? Can you describe us the people there gathering, the activists?
In terms of the groups of people, if I understood correctly, the groups of people that have supported Julian Assange are obviously freedom of expression groups, human rights groups, increasingly the body of British journalists, and internationally the International Federation of Journalists. But also there is a core group of activists, of British people, but also an important section of Latin Americans from Colombia, from Chile, members who because of the Pinochet regime, a number of Americans have come out and have outside prison and outside the magistrates court in support of Julian Assange. So some of them are here today waiting to see if Julian Assange will be allowed free on bail.
So we now have details about the outsides of the Westminster Court, but now we have to know, do you have any details about the hearing? Who is present there? Maybe supporters of Assange, also part of his legal team, if you have details, maybe his family. We don't know if his partner is there. We have to know. Can you offer more details?
Yeah, in terms of what we can expect, it's expected that this will last approximately an hour, so it should be finished within half an hour. And at that point, we will know whether Assange has been granted bail. As I said, the US has to formally appeal the process, something which is also in doubt. There have been some analysts who have said that the US, that a deal has been struck between Biden, the incoming Biden administration in the US, and the British government, so that this will not be appealed. Also because an appeal would mean that the prison system in the US might come under scrutiny, given that the judge cited the suicide risk of Assange and also prison conditions as the reason for not granting the extradition. She rejected all the defense's arguments around the political nature of the extradition request and the issues around freedom of expression and attack on. So it's essentially boiled down to an issue of Assange's mental health. And so that's what we're waiting now to see if he will be granted bail.
Yes, in this case, we know the precedents of this case, the antecedents of this case. We know that on Monday, the British judge Vanessa Britsh rejected a request from the US government of extradition for Julian Assange. But in this case, what can we expect from this case? If they bailed out Julian Assange, what can we expect?
Well, if he's given bail, as I said, we will have to wait if the US challenges, appeals the decision. There also might be an appeal by Assange's own side with regards to the verdict itself and the grounds for the verdict. But I think the immediate feeling amongst the supporters is that after so many years, the possibility of Julian Assange being freed from either being in an embassy or being in a high security prison as he is at the moment in Belmarsh with reportedly very bad conditions, with very high rates of COVID amongst the inmates. That is what's driving a lot of the Julian Assange supporters out here.
So, Pablo, I have another question for you. In this case, we know this is a tense case. We know this tense can spark maybe political activism, but also protests and also gatherings. And we know the decision can spark also many protests in this case. We see the demonstrations, the pacific demonstrations of all the supporters to Julian Assange, but we also see the law enforcement personnel there. So are they keeping people in line? They are trying to keep safe the people, or they are trying to prevent them to support Julian Assange?
Absolutely. Due to the COVID restrictions imposed by the government on protests, it is not technically allowed for protesters to be here. Only members of the press, and the police have been very aggressive in enforcing that. In fact, on Monday, I had reports that they were finding people on the spot and also escorting people to train stations to make sure they went back to their house. So there's been a quite aggressive enforcement of the curtailments on protests at the moment in the UK, citing the issue of COVID, the high levels of COVID in the country.
So maybe in another aspects, in another perspectives of the case. Now we know that he will not be extradited to the United States, which is a good news for everyone who follows the case and who supports Assange. But also we want to know, in many aspects, people is expecting Joe Biden, the president-elect of the United States, to take action over the case. Because we know Donald Trump pardoned many figures who had been pled guilty in many cases of accusations of murders. But in case of Assange, he hasn't been pronounced about Assange. In this case, what could Biden do for his justice, for his release, for his freedom in this case?
Okay, I'm afraid I'm being moved by the British police at the moment, so I'm going to have to cut the transmission and move.
You're allowed to stay, you don't need to move the area.
Okay, no.
You need to move back just for social distancing.
Okay, I've been told that I have to move further away from the court entrance, so we can try and...
Okay, Pablo, we will go back to you. We will go back to you, Pablo. Don't worry. Don't get concerned. So we will give further details in other emissions. Stay with us, please.